Hello, Amanda Newworth here, and I have a very, very special guest, Phillip Lindsay. Phillip Lindsay is an Australian-born esoteric astrologer and has the most incredible knowledge about the hidden history of humanity. I'm going to leave so many links below for everybody, but I have invited Phillip to come on to talk about Australia and New Zealand. Hello, Phillip, and welcome.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, everyone.
Now, in your wonderful journeyings through information, probably stickers libraries, book upon book and knowledge upon knowledge, could you please give some insight into what is going on with Australia and New Zealand, with it being in such a serious situation of freedom, really facing?
Sure. Perhaps I'll just sort of touch on what esoteric astrology is too, Amanda, seeing you mentioned it. It's really the astrology of the soul as opposed to the astrology of the personality, which most astrology is these days. And it's very good, a lot of that astrology. It's humanistic or psychological. It looks at the integration of the personality and the invocation of the spirit. But esoteric astrology gives a lot more tools and knowledge that look at one's soul purpose in the horoscope and how to invoke that soul purpose through the particular rising sign of the horoscope, the rising sign having far more importance in esoteric astrology than exoteric astrology, as we call it. But Australia and New Zealand is just frankly such a mess at the moment. It's very painful to watch from where I live in Europe, and to communicate with my friends on Telegram that I have, who give me in-depth reports of what's going on there. And I wrote about it, of course, in my most recent newsletter. I've written about Australia a few times. If you go to my website, esotericastrologer.org, and go to the section in newsletters called Search by Subject, you can find a section on Australian commentaries there. For instance, I had a long newsletter on the fires a few years ago. So I wrote about Australia and New Zealand from the point of view of the fact that they share the sign Virgo in common. Virgo, the Virgin, who's the soul energy that conditions Australia, and the personality of New Zealand. So they both share something in common with this Virgo energy. And I pointed out that both countries are somewhat enslaved to the lower expression of Virgo, which is like a obsession with health and cleanliness and purification, and the relation to, because Virgo is a sign that relates to healing. It's one of the healing signs of the zodiac, and it covers all the different modalities of healing that are around, from mainstream exoteric healing to all the alternative therapies. And mainstream healing, medical healing has a place. But what's happened, as has happened all around the world, and Australia and New Zealand are like a microcosm of what's been going on, is that they have fallen foul of this lower expression of Virgo. But that's not the only thing, of course. Australia and New Zealand have been almost hijacked by other forces that operate from Europe or globally. And this is again the kind of microcosm of what's been going on around the world. So the once, for instance, heroic Jacinda Ardern, in terms of the Christchurch shooting and so forth, she has revealed herself to be just another politician that's been manipulated, similar to the many state leaders in Australia, such as Dan Andrews in Victoria, a person who appears to me to have become totally possessed, obsessed, controlled, as I said in a recent newsletter, there are people who say that he's controlled completely by the Chinese, and there may be some truth in that. But what has happened is that this has brought out the worst in Australia. I remember the worst of Australia came out in the Lindsay Chamberlain thing about almost 30 years ago, when she was demonized by the entire population of Australia, and the media just went mad on the whole thing. There was basically a national hysteria, and but what's happening, what appears to be happening now, is that Australia has reverted to its penal colony days, settled by convicts a couple of centuries ago, and the draconian kind of lockdowns and edicts from various state governments is just appalling. So, excuse me, this has happened in various other parts of the world. I'm in touch with people in Canada who are experiencing the same thing. It's not so bad where I am in Europe, in Portugal, for instance, and Spain. Although we do have, you have to wear your mask in the supermarket or a place that's 400 square meters or larger. But it's pretty relaxed compared to the obscenities, is probably the best word I can think of, that's happening to Australian people, to the intimidation by police on people who, for the slightest thing, it's just way over the top, especially when we consider the fact that the rate of COVID deaths is minuscule in Australia, minuscule. So this is an over the top, out of proportion reaction, and the same in New Zealand. And I've brought this out for the last 22 months in all my newsletters. I have a special coronavirus section on the search by subject section I mentioned before, that details my consistency in all my researches. Sometimes a newsletter used to take me a week, 3 days to a week to write. The last 22 months, they've taken me almost 3 or 4 weeks to write, because I've had to do so much research to really, weigh the pairs of opposites, all the conflicting arguments, to really find out for myself concretely, and then allow my intuition to work with that to take a position. Essentially, I've had to take a position on this, and I've in the process, I've alienated friends, co-workers, and so forth, because this has split the entire global community down the middle in all strata of society, spiritual groups, you name it. The encouraging thing that's happening now is that a lot of pushback is happening. If you're on Telegram, you can get an amazing amount of information coming through there that is not being repeated on Facebook or any other social media, or all the newspapers and YouTube and so forth that ban all these. They ban any discussion on the subject.
That's correct. I've been banned many a time. So I have several different channels because the very thing that you're talking about, it's a very interesting time here. A lot of it I have noticed, though, is that there's a lot of optics going on. What people are seeing overseas is being used as a manipulation against them as well for what is coming. It is horrendous here, no doubt at all. And it's so true what you were saying about the splitting. And I would almost say that it is like there are different tribes. That's the state that we're at, where there are tribes that are going, I will only die on my feet, and there's tribes that will just march off. In what I would, in my world, is like an uninformed ignorance, and the split is there, and there's not really the across jumping back over anymore. So would that be this tribal thing, the presence of this tribe, is that, could we liken that to a ray, or is that an incarnation? Do you have any understanding of this split and this divide?
Yeah, well, I've been thinking about it a lot, of course, and written about it. And basically,
Hello, everybody. For the full version of this, come on over to my BitChute. I'm just hanging by a thread on YouTube and I really just don't want to risk it at the moment. Thanks so much. See you at BitChute. Lots of love.